resident and born in Kentucky back in 1910. He was one of them young fellows that really didn't particularly like school, you know, kind of like me back in the day. Somebody who, they said, used to hop out the window and go look at bugs and trees and leaves and rocks and whatnot on his own with magnifying glasses, and kind of like to do things his own way, like some of us did back when we were younger and, you know, couldn't follow directions, obviously. But he had a little bit more drive than possibly I did and a few other people did in life, because he actually was a reader and liked to learn. So when he was about 13 years old up in Kentucky, he was born in 1910, so when he was about 13 years old, he pretty much dropped out of school, which wasn't uncommon back in those days. It wasn't uncommon. And he started writing some little things for the newspapers and stuff around there. And then at about 14 years old, he decided, as he stated, this isn't a direct quote, that you can't go out and sail on ships in Kentucky. So he ended up taking off and heading to New Orleans, where he started going out as merchant marine ships and being a cabin boy, and then later he was a merchant marine. He went all over the world during his worldly travels over the next 7, 8, 9 years until he settled down and got married later on at about 20 years old or so. He traveled all over the world, Australia, India, everywhere. Rock prospecting, reading books, learning along the way, and just doing everything. And his home port was New Orleans. And that is where he finally settled at, got married, had a daughter, and so forth. And lived out the remaining of his life around that area, had his studio down in that area, and so forth. So the genius of H. Alvin Sharpe, one of these self-taught people, you know, somewhat like Benjamin Franklin and to some extent Albert Einstein. There are some people that are just that way, whether it's with math, art, or whatever their topics are. Some people cross genres, cross topics. And as you will see, he just wasn't a die cutter. He just wasn't in metals and silversmith. There was a lot of other aspects to him as well. Don't know why that's cut off. That is strange. Let me see if I can hit this and maybe go full screen to the other stuff was correct. You know why that possibly doing that?
Yeah.
There you go. Appreciate that. Thank you. Well, and that's a young Alvin Sharpe right there.
Which one? On the left?
Yeah, this fellow right here. Yeah, right there. And basically, he ended up going down there around 1930. He was doing artwork, and like I said, a lot of riverboats, hotels. One of the hotels that has and had a bunch of his actual paintings and so forth, that was the Roosevelt Hotel. The Roosevelt Hotel, they had, I think at one time, over 600 pieces of his work. So that was a place that really, he did some business with as well. Various riverboats back in the day, and the New Orleans Board of Trade building is one of his famous pieces, which is unsigned because they actually removed the scaffolding before he could sign it. But we'll get to that in a few moments. But during 1930, 31, and so forth, he was doing a lot of actual paintings and a few other techniques as well, which we'll get to. That we'll get to in a moment. That's the ceiling of the New Orleans Board of Trade. But this is Mr. Sharpe during a little publicity stunt, but at the same time, a very cool thing to do, in my opinion. Chicago and Southern Airlines and him hooked up with an idea, and he actually got on a plane, about a 14-hour journey up and back, and flew all the way from New Orleans up to Chicago and back, painting the Mississippi River from the air. So that's pretty neat, and that was, I could not find an actual proper picture of the painting or whatnot, but it would probably be very minute if you expanded it on the screen like this anyways. But that was him boarding and taking a publicity photo for that journey, which is, I think, a pretty cool thing to do, especially back in the early 30s. But this is the actual piece on the New Orleans Board of Trade building. These are larger 12-foot, I think 8-foot give or take, P panels, and those represent the actual industries of New Orleans. Here you can see a little bit better. 12-foot high mural surrounding the skylight of New Orleans Board of Trade Center. That's at 316 Magazine Street. You can still go and see that on occasion if you can get in it and take a look. Beautiful, beautiful work. He laid on his back basically for about 3 months or so forth, and laid on his back kind of like Michelangelo did back in the day, and actually did those paintings. You had the sulfur, coffee, shipping, telecommunications, public utility, and transportations when the murals were completed. It said the scaffolding was removed so quickly that Mr. Sharpe was never able to sign the paintings. But beautiful, beautiful artwork, and you know, just shame he didn't get to sign it, obviously, but who's going to crawl up that high in there and see the signature anyways to a point, but we all know, so. Another form of art that he did early on, and he did it occasionally when he was older, was the copper repose. I can't pronounce it.
Repoussé.
Say it one time.
Repoussé.
Repoussé art. And that is basically they tap it from the behind, and it pushes the artwork out, the metal and so forth, and then they do some other techniques for the finishing touches and so forth. And that is the same general process that was used on the Statue of Liberty, obviously in a lot larger form and so forth. But he actually was fairly famous for doing that early on. That was the way that he made a living for a few years. In addition, his lithographs. He was famous for doing a lot of lithographs. He did stone lithography, which was one of the older techniques, and he learned all of these while he was on the merchant marine ships, just reading books, and then when he got around and he could have a shop by trial and error. And he had a nice classical style. They actually pointed out that he actually, during his early years, once he got to New Orleans when he was traveling around, he actually pretty much got kicked out and or quit 3 different art schools because they wanted to go more modern, but he was more classical. And everybody was trying to be progressive in them days, so he liked the classic style. And I don't think he was much of a person from even his early life that really liked to go the status quo like everybody else. And I think he wanted to go at his pace, which apparently seemed a little bit quicker than some. But he actually worked on those. It has numerous lithographs of various sizes over the years. That's one of my more famous ones, besides the still water. I do not own this or the copper piece. I don't own any of the paintings. This is actually a fellow down in New Orleans, Metairie, Louisiana area owns that, or owned it at one time, last I've heard. But that is another example of his artwork. He also did 2 books of poetry. Some are better than others, like with most poets, but some of them are very excellent. And he, I thought this was funny when I heard this quote. He said he had about 500 poems, and these are the 2 books. But he said he had severe reoccurring attacks of bursitis, like verses with a play on bursitis, obviously. And that was a nice quote that I always enjoyed when I read it. He actually said that. But he actually compiled these 1974 to 1979. I own a couple editions of this. I've never seen an edition of this one at all. So if you guys ever do, point me in the right direction. I would love to pick one of them up, the black cover. And that's actually a carved bronze piece that actually is affixed in the cover of each of them. And that is in all of the editions, not just a special edition. Okay, so if you ever find one, that will be affixed in the actual edition.
Have you looked at abebooks.com?
What was that?
ABE, American Book.
Abe?
Yeah, the Abe.
I may have at some point in time, I will have to keep doing that.
Yeah.
And you just gotta keep searching sometimes, things come in and out. But yeah, that's one that I'm looking forward to acquiring one day. But But very, very, very nice. There's a few of them in here that are just wonderful, and like we all know, even with Shakespeare, there's some that, you know, maybe they should have published. You know, so it always happens. It happens to the best of them, I think. Okay. And then the modern garden blue. This is what Mr. Sharpe was most famous for, honestly. He was the guy that came up with the idea and got the monogrammed bloom, you know, the throw that they throw off of floats, and also those are in aluminum. And then the silver and various other varieties, silver ox and so forth, including 99 silver, etc. But basically, he had been trying for some years, 5 years, give or take. So he actually, in passing, he had thought about it for even longer. But he had actually looked into even festivals, even over in Europe. He's been self-serving, obviously, to a point being he was a die cutter. It was business for him, but it was a cool idea as well. But he got in touch with these different festivals and different places and said, hey, let's do this. And then people weren't that interested. And they just weren't that interested. So he decided, hey, give it one last shot. And other than that, I guess he's going to go back to the paintings and, you know, all that stuff and try to finish and maybe do some dye work, but you know, this would have been steady work. This is steady work when you're talking about that many units and design that you could really get this going in certain cases, you know. So Rex, which was and still is one of the crews or clubs, that's what they call them down there, the Carnival Cruise, which is basically a club, and down in New Orleans area, you know, you have. And there are guidebooks that cover the Mardi Gras doubloons for the New Orleans cruise, but you know, in Mobile, Alabama, that's where Mardi Gras kind of originated. There are no guidebooks for those because they don't value as high as some of the New Orleans Mardi Gras pieces do because of the lack of information and vintages and whatnot. But Raphael Monsoon and a few guys have worked on and have some nice Mardi Gras doubloon guidebooks. They're pictureless, but you can look up some of the pictures, but they have lists of the years, the cruise, and from there you can figure most of them out. So he basically said, I've designed some very beautiful doubloons. They can be coined in soft aluminum, gold, or bright very cheaply. I feel that these Rex coins would be a sensation and a memento of Mardi Gras. And he got in touch with Darwin Fenner at the captain of Rex, who a lot of people don't know, but his father was one of the Merrill Lynch people, ended up being absorbed into Merrill Lynch in one of the partners, I think in 1941, if I'm not mistaken. And he actually was one of the partners at Merrill Lynch later, which is somewhat significant because some of you guys have seen those gold bars, the half ounce, the 1 ounce, 5 ounce, 10 ounce, etc. Merrill Lynch gold bars that were actually poured and done by Handy and Harmon, the silver and gold people back in the day. And we don't know for sure, but it's thought that Mr. Fenner, because of some of this stuff in the 50s and 60s, later on kind of was instrumental in having those possibly made as well. So that actually is another neat little piece. But at that point, Rex Kaplan, that's the guy in charge, like Tony Schweitzer is president of Fund now. So that's basically what they mean by Rex Kaplan. He was the president, so to speak, of Rex Mardi Gras crew at that time. So Mr. Sharpe walks into his office and he said, truthfully, I tried to interest everyone I could think of in the idea of the bloom. He told the Times-Picayune in '65, when I went to the captain of Rex that day, I said, this is my last stop. He said, Fenner was interested, but he expressed concern of the prospect of throwing metal objects at parade goers, right? I mean, think about that. They were afraid of getting sued, put somebody out head to head with something. They were a little bit worried about that. So when Mr. Sharpe walked in, he had an armful, a handful, etc. I heard an armful, but some people say a good-sized handful of the aluminum ones. And in response, Mr. Sharpe just basically walked up, had them, and just threw them up the guy, right? So when Mr. Fenner, I guess, felt the weight, and realized that it was a fine idea and it wasn't going to actually hurt anybody, he basically, it was a go. It was a go. And that's how the Mardi Gras de Bloom was actually born. Okay, right there, that was it. And I think if he hadn't thrown them on the guy, it would have probably been probably not a go, because that is a big deal, especially when you're dealing with big organizations. You definitely would not want to get sued by throwing things off of floats, even though nowadays between the beanie beads, the moon pies, one crew even threw coconuts at one time, so.
Hopefully they threw those onto the ground and then people pick them up.
Yeah.
That was Zulu, wasn't it? Wasn't Zulu do the
I
coconut?
think it was. I think it might have been Zulu that did the coconuts. But I think that was a pretty bad idea, but hey, that's just me. I went to college and kind of from teenage years to, I guess, 17 to 29, I lived in Mobile, went to the University of South Alabama. And so I've been to a lot of Mardi Gras things. I mean, some of the guys, they're throwing their moon pies pretty hard too. I mean, you get caught with a moon pie in the jaw, you remember that for a couple of days. But a lot of people down there had a few little toddies, so. But anyhow, and there's a picture of Mr. Sharpe with his doubloons. Obviously not that day. That was a press release at some point, throwing some doubloons up in the air.
77.
And so forth. But that was an old picture of Mr. Sharpe. Rex actually ordered 80,000 of them. Boom, 80,000 for the 1960 and 29 silvers. For the members, kind of like Fun does with the silver. They have the bronzes while you guys pick up, and they have a few silvers they have for certain people, like some of the people that I guess that do the judging and various things like that. But I think Mr. Finner actually ordered some, but the original ones did not have dates on them because they didn't know if they would get rid of them all. And they might have to use them over a few years or this, that. So the original first year did not actually have dates on the pieces. That is the actual inaugural Mardi Gras doubloon. So that's the actual original first design, obverse and reverse right there. And as you can see, no dates.
It's interesting that despite the fact they made 80,000 of them, if you go looking through junk boxes of Mardi Gras doubloons, you don't see those.
I know, and the silver's obviously even harder, but even the aluminums, they are very, very difficult to find. And certain ones are extremely collectible, even of later years. Okay, and these are also some they're not struck by HL. I don't think they're struck by HL for sure, but these were actually some later on ones to show when they talk about gold, bright, and different colors of aluminum. That's what they were talking about for you guys that haven't made it down to New Orleans. But those are the aluminums they generally throw off, obviously different year. And there are collector societies and so forth that actually collect his pieces and or pieces in general. Some people collect certain crews, some people go for the whole darn thing, some people go base sets, some people, just like with coins and other things, they go full in on everything or they really narrow it down.
Topical also.
Oh yeah.
Topical.
Oh yeah, very, very topical, very topical. Some people like the ones that are more based on mythology, some go more for the history and various things like that as well. And who did the die? Some people just go after the engravers pieces. This is actually Mr. Sharpe doing a die. He would take his metal die, he would work it a little bit, he would actually work and draw outlines and get the basic idea of it. And just like the hobo carvers, if you go back to the club section, you'll see some of the hobo nickel carvers. And a lot of them will use microscopes. Now they use some other digital aspects as well on occasion. But they would actually hand carve pretty much the same general idea of that onto the steel dies, and intaglio meaning in reverse. Because remember, everything he had to do, including the letters, for it to turn out in the correct orientation where you could read it, on the die, it has to be in reverse of the mirror image. And to me, that seemed like that would be one of the more difficult parts, because whether you did this profile of me or this profile of me, okay, but having it right and so forth, all the letters and certain things backwards and get them to look correctly, that seems like that would be pretty difficult. But I guess for artists, maybe not as difficult as a regular
Once
person.
you start doing that, it's very easy to do.
Yeah. But I guess, but that's the difference between an artist and a regular person like myself, that mindset, But that was him back in the day doing actually a die. Again, that's that, and that is Mr. Sharpe with his main press that he used. Okay, he did do a lot of strikes on his, but the bigger unit ones, like the 80,000 pieces, That was actually sent up to Chicago and done at Green Duck Mint back in the day. And then at about 1968, you had John Barr and Bill Cox. They formed Barco Mint down in New Orleans, and then they started picking up wrecks, and then a lot of the other crews as well started doing theirs. I think one was like American Can Company, the other was basically a machine shop to a point, and they merged together, the two guys, and Barr and Cox, Barco Mint, which is now the New Orleans Mint. I think that's Mr. Barr's son, or the later relatives of him. I think it's his son. I think his name's Peter, possibly. But that is what is now New Orleans Mint. Okay, not the New Orleans Mint as in the government mint, but the New Orleans Mint, the private mint that was Barco previously. So the main big issues were at Green Duck until they belonged with the Barco. But smaller issues and other things, he actually did right there on his press himself. Here is an example of one of the dies that he actually did. And this is actually in my personal collection. This is one of the ship dies, because he was a merchant marine and he loved the sea, loved the ocean. And, well, he always went back to the ocean when he could. He enjoyed the ships, and he did various series of different ships. And that was one of his fortes. He really, truly enjoyed. That wasn't just because it was a design that somebody wanted. That is the lead trial strike of that piece. What they would do, some of them are progression strikes. Some they tested it, he did it and then tested it, and boom, it was there. But there are progression strikes, which I'll show you later on, where they would take this, because once you harden the steel, if you start going in and doing more engraving on it, more work, it can make it brittle, and it causes more die cracks and die errors later once it's hardened. So what they would do is they would test that in lead, sometimes plastic or leather, and that would give them basically a proof where they could see it the right way and really look at it to see if it looked like they wanted it to look. And then that is actually the 1 ounce silver piece that came off of that, and that is the reverse, which was from the crew of Poseidon. Okay, but that is the die, the lead trial, and the obverse, reverse of that piece. And those are in my personal collection. I got that from Raphael Monsoon. That was in his collection, and then I got that from him. So I was thankful for that. This is actually neat here. I picked these up in Vicksburg, Mississippi. You know, a lot of you guys, we love a big show, right? It's nice to walk in and see 600 people and see all of our buddies and friends and mentors and mentorees and so forth. And we think, wow, we're going to find a bunch of stuff at that fun show, or we're going to find a bunch of stuff today. And sometimes we do. We find something that we've been looking for years. Sometimes we walk into a show with 6 tables in Vicksburg, Mississippi at a casino, and walk over to a table and find something neat like that. That's the Choctaw lead trial strikes from a die. I do not own the die for that, but a guy had these 2 pieces in his case, and I said, "Aren't those Alvin Sharpe?" He said, "Yes, sir, they are. What do you know about Mr. Sharpe?" And we started chit-chatting. He said, "Well, are you going to be here tomorrow?" I said, "I can be." And he said, "Well, I have a few other pieces at the house. I can bring them tomorrow," because he was a local fellow. And we'll get to some of them later, because I bought a few really cool pieces from him the following day. Okay. This is an example of what I was just speaking about in the previous one, so we get to it, about a lead progression trial, where they're checking it as they go for details to see how it looks, where they can continue to add stuff. This is the Daniel Boone piece, and as you can see, he checked it out and tested it, gave it an overlook, and he didn't like that, and the ear and a few things, so he went back, added a little bit here, added some more details to bring the cheekbone and face out, a little bit more around here. So those are progression strikes, okay? And then towards the end, when he did it, he put his HAS, Alvin Sharpe stamp. You see, that's not on that one. But that is the Daniel Boone progression trials in lead. I keep wanting to think about leather. I do own a few leather strikes from the late Twain Spillman as well, you know, but that's the man. I've never seen a plastic leather strike, but a few people think John Lott or Shelby Dunlap, I think they own a couple, but haven't ever owned one myself. This is it's fairly heavy, 4.5 pounds give or take. This is a multi-lead strike here, and just some of his famous pieces Mr. Sharpe did over the years, a few of the famous pieces, one of the ships and a couple others. This Uno bar, I've never seen it. I've never heard of anybody that's seen it. Obviously the die existed, but I've never heard of it or never seen it. The rest of them I have, but this one, and I'm a bar guy as opposed to a round guy, and I've never heard anybody that had it, seen it, etc. But so if you guys ever find a bar with that, it is very, very rare. So you will be very fortunate if you bump into it. And I would say even if it's $500, $600, $800, $2,000, you should buy it if it's a good condition in silver, obviously, or obviously if it was in gold for some reason, that would even be more. But very, very, very rare piece if you ever see that. But I thought that was neat. That's actually sitting in my closet right now. I try not to touch it too much because, well, it's lead, but I don't know. I'm at the age where I probably had lead paint and everything else, so hopefully I'm okay for the most part. Okay. And then one of the other things that Mr. Sharpe is extremely known for was what they called intaglio die art, which a lot of people call studio art now. I mean, there's actually people in the community that are silver people now that actually do pours and whatnot, like Brian Barkley, Hector Padilla, he's Campbell Hector, silver, I think Peso, you've even done a couple studio pieces, haven't you? And so forth, but that was basically because Mr. Sharpe and a few people back in the day was doing sort of things. These were rolled planchets. A lot of the silver was basically scrap silver from Green Duck Mint or various places like that. He would get it, roll it out, cut it, and take his dies and stamp it on it. I mean, he lived in New Orleans and he did enjoy the nightlife, they say. And sometimes he wanted some money, and this was stuff that he would sell in his little studio to, you know, passerbyers, tourists, and collectors alike.
Did he ever like make a frame with different ones? Because I've seen other artists do that.
Some frames, usually with one piece in a smaller frame. Every once in a while you'll see one piece matted in a frame, a smaller frame. He did a lot like that. I've never really seen too many multiples. I've seen one or two where he had multiples in it, but wasn't sure. We never could have confirmation whether he did that or whether a collector actually did it later, as far as the actual framing. But these are all my personal pieces. Well, obviously the ship, he loved the ships. And then we'll get to the Hamilton Mint pieces later, the profiles of the West, but some of these pieces were some of the basically designs, the go-along designs. That's the stage driver, Cherokee Buck, and so forth. These are the houses, some of the old Maressa, the Art Center, and another building in New Orleans. Like remember Interview with the Vampires in the old plantation homes and houses? A lot of detail on those I really enjoyed. That is a Disney Magic Kingdom piece. He actually did Spinner, that Viking, and one of my favorites, Poor, P-O-R-E, Working Gal, Poor Working Girl, the Elephant, one of my favorites right there. And going back to his roots, Kentucky Log Cabin. Kentucky Log Cabin man right there, the pile of wood, the axe, and the stampings. A lot of times you'll have no stampings on those. These are all silver, 999 silver. Sometimes you'll have more or less stampings, whether it's studio, whether it says proof, unique, the HAS symbol, or his various other Alvin Sharpe symbols. And when you see the little crescent moon, that is because New Orleans is the crescent city, okay? When you see the crown, that's related to Mardi Gras, okay? So that's what those stampings mean. Unique is basically his equivalent of a special edition, and something that he basically did that he felt was basically more like a special edition and a limited vintage, what we would call a limited special edition, limited vintage nowadays. He called unique.
Yeah, but it's not always unique.
I know.
And he was very good at putting unique or one of a kind on them. and made many of them.
Yeah, that ended up happening, and then you look at variety, because as a lot of people even do nowadays, they say, well, yeah, but this was elongated, so this is a slightly different variety if you had a square, and this was a 5-ounce glass versus a 2-ounce glass. So that's a way that they always finagled it a little bit so they could, I guess, make a little extra money. So you can always play that variety card when you're doing certain things like that, I guess. But yeah, he did push the envelope, as do certain people even nowadays, with their varieties, right? So, but yeah, he actually, like he was saying, sometimes you might find this with unique, and let's say there's 20 of these, and then you find one that he rolled twice as thick, that's a 5-ounce glasser, and he has unique on that as well. And then he used the same design on a hair bracelet, etc. So every different design, so the actual artwork and the die might not be unique in the long run, but he said, well, but the piece is, because it's a different shape or a different genre within it. So, but you know, yeah, but that's absolutely correct right there. Plus, sometimes if he needed a little extra money and he was in the shop, I think he would, if somebody came in and wanted something, he would just simply do it for them, even if it was kind of a closed issue at the time, so to speak. But back in them days, I guess people were a little less worried about that as they are now, because people weren't as concerned with true mintages as they are now when it came to things like this, unlike with coins and certain things. But still, you know, I've always heard that it was a little bit iffy. You have to look at more of the occurrence rates as you could about the true mintages and stuff like that, even if you could find them. This is a John Baptiste piece, and this is basically another example of where he just decided he was going to do another variety, because in its own that was unique, in its own this was semi-unique, in its own this one they did some bigger, you know, aluminums and coppers and things like that, and even gold. But together, it was like a little special edition, and see, that's the crescent moon, the crown, unique, etc. But that's just a perfect example of what you said, because in theory, having this on one is unique, but each one, not so much, you know what I mean? So, but that one is actually a little bit over 6 ounces. It was rolled. It's a little bit wavy, as you can see. If you've seen it from the side, it's kind of wavy. It went through the roller machine back in the day. But that is a pretty neat piece overall. I actually got lucky on that. I picked that up pretty well about 10 years ago. So I felt pretty pleased with that one. Some of them you feel like you hit over the head with when you finally make an offer on it and do a deal. This one I felt pretty pleased with. This one, well, this is one that I'm happy I am, but whew. But this is the DeSoto piece, designer studio proof, a special, you know, piece he did for the clubs and whatnot down there in Bradenton. And from here to far places, and it was just, he did various pieces of that, and then another engraver, Ralph, somebody, I forgot his name, but he actually stepped in later on after Mr. Sharpe passed and did some pieces for them as well, in the same general style as well. I've seen a couple of them over the years. I can't remember the guy's last name, but his first name was Ralph. If anybody's interested in that, I can look it up, so just get in touch with me. I can look it up when I get back to the house. But that is an 8-ounce, similar to the other, but this isn't wavy. This has a little bit more thickness to it, and as you can see, he worked the edges a little bit, put a little bit more effort into that one, being it was actually for the people who ordered the obverse reverse actual pieces, the coins, or medallions. But that is a fairly nice piece, and I enjoy that one. I really like it. Because from here to far places kind of reminded me of how he kind of lived his life, especially when he was younger, you know. This, I think, is my wife's favorite big Alvin Sharpe piece. She actually on occasion wears this cuff bracelet or hair bracelet is one of the pieces he did. And again, remember that Kentucky log cabin we were just speaking about? Here is that same Kentucky log cabin again. And this is 999 silver. That's just toning and patina from the age and the oils on one's skin, oxidation of air and whatnot. This, I actually own that Polaroid. That actually was hanging up at one time in his shop. And I ended up making an offer to some people that bought some of his estate at one time and purchased that because I wanted it. You know how we all are. but that is a fairly decent size. It's about 3.5, 4 inches long, and it will fit on my wife's wrist, okay? A couple of bracelets I have coming up to show you, they are smaller. Either some very, very thin women, or most likely children had them, because they were a lot smaller around. Like this one, for example, kind of has a Wonder Woman feel to it. That would not go on most women's wrists, okay? It's a bit smaller than that, unless somebody was very, very thin. But again, Kentucky Log Cabin, they have overlay, it has some brass, bronze, silver, a couple different things in it. And haven't had it tested yet, but eventually I'm gonna get an XFR to see exactly what it is here and here and here and here, and update at some point. Haven't had the chance to do so as of yet. But a very, very neat style. My wife enjoys this one, but it is too small by far to fit on her wrist. So she hasn't been lucky enough to wear that one yet. And then this one, again, is not really large enough. It would fit on probably an 8 or 9 year old girl, I would think. But it had the two charms, the Alvin Sharpe and the HAS Studio Fine Silver. And up in here, it was February 14th, 1976 to, it looks like a Vanna Alvin Sharpe. And that was an interesting piece. I picked that up a few, 5, 6 months ago, I think. So it's fairly new to my collection. It's kind of neat the way it was. It just, I thought it was interesting. Again, and actually from the same person that owned that last one I was speaking of, the smaller one with the two things, I picked up these buttons as well. These are all about 6.2 grams. I think one might be 6.2. But all 999 silver, the crabs, the shells, and so forth. Those were actually buttons that he made. And I've seen a few other styles, but I was looking up to pick these up as well. And just to show some of the variety he had and, you know, business he had at the time. Because think about New Orleans, down in the section he was in, I guess you could, to tourists, I mean, tourists, everybody's budget, and back in the day, he could make some money doing these things. This is one of my favorite. When I was growing up, grew up kind of when I was 5 to 10 in Jacksonville, Florida, and then I moved into Alabama. So I was a turtle guy, like a lot of those boys were, you know, out there trying to catch turtles and tortoises and whatnot. This is a belt buckle, obviously. And as you can see, the Alvin Sharpe instead of just the HAS, that is what they consider more of his special edition signature stamp for some of his larger items and some of his more desirable items that he developed a little bit later on, kind of in the middle of when he was doing things alone. And again, all of his stamps, they were actually hand done as well, just like his dies. He did not order those from the store or order and so forth. He actually hand carved all his own stampings as well. And as it says right there, and there ain't no 100-year-old rabbits. And I really enjoy that piece. I haven't wore it. I don't think I have a belt that would fit it, and I don't think I really want to wear it regardless because of what it is. But at some point, somebody may have at one point, okay? But I enjoy it, and as you can see, it was enameled over the silver, which is actually a thing nowadays. You know, a lot of people really enjoy the truly hand enameled silver. Actually, we have a few people in the community that actually are very good enamelers. One of the best enamelers nowadays is a guy named David Hill over in the UK. Also a guy named Frank, I can't pronounce his last name, Atare, up in New Jersey. He's probably actually past David Hill for being the best enameler in the world right now that we know of. Dean Parks over in the UK, DP Silver Art, he's extremely good as well. Allie Hobgood out of Texas, she's getting better and better by the day. And All Chips, Ricky Pushkin, he is getting better and better every day as well. He owns allchips.com. He's a casino ship guy who also collects silver. He's a producer of silver. And then he got into enameling some silver bars. And he's getting better and better every day as well. His skin tones aren't as great as some of the rest, but the rest of it is pretty darn good. But I know that Mr. Sharpe had at least a couple enamelers over the period, but his main enameler was a lady named Linda Church. I understand she was an Oriental lady. And she did some pretty good work for him. And, you know, depending on the price of the items, some obviously more detailed and better than others, just like with a lot of other things in life. But I'm pretty sure Linda Church did the enameling on that piece. Not 100% on that, but pretty sure it's thought to be. Okay, then H. Alvin Sharpe, the pendants, the handy enamel pieces, and so forth. This is a Walk with Memories, very, very nice piece. They also did this in a regular studio piece that did not have the veil and it was not jewelry and not enamel. They also did that, you know, like the studio Battaglia die art piece that I showed earlier in various weights. But this is a enamel piece as well in hand, especially when you move it back and forth to like beautiful, beautiful piece. And then these obviously are some sort of pendants or something, you know, a little bit different than we wear nowadays. This design right here says Cato the Presumptuous, because he was a big time client of his, a big proponent and collector of Mr. Sharpe's work. And I guess apparently he presumed everything was for him. I don't know how he got the nickname, but my understanding, I've been trying to research E.V. Cato for years. When I went to AMA this last summer up in Pittsburgh, I forgot the man's name at the moment, but he was treasurer of A&A. He said that his mother and father at one point in time were the appointees to the U.S. Assay Commission, and he told me that Mr. Cato was actually an appointee to the U.S. Assay Commission at one time as well. I've not verified that. I cannot find anything in all that. If any of you guys do, please pass it forward to me, because I would love to know that. But E.V. Cato, he was out of Mississippi, Cotton Patch, Mississippi, and a few other places. And there's a lot of H. Alvin Sharpe pieces that has him either on it, inscribed like to him, or has pictures and or designs with him included in it. But E.V. Cato Jr. And that's my understanding. The U.S. Assay Commission, which is OTEX, the Old Time Assay Commission Society, you know, the pre-people, that was around from, I guess, the 1700s up until when Jimmy Carter, President Carter, disbanded it around 1980. Okay, which I think we need to get it back. I think we need to get it back at some point in time. I think we were speaking about that the other day. And so hopefully we can move forward, because now that we have all the platinum, the gold, silver, and things like that back in our currency, well, back at least in our collectible currency, as we call it, our collectible numismatic pieces, it would be nice to move back in that direction a little bit. I think it would help the hobby.
Of course, the other thing is that the mint no longer produces, they buy the blanks now.
Yeah, like Sunshine and various
Yeah.
other places, yeah. So,
That's why they went to $9.99, because they couldn't get people to pay $900 for them.
Yeah. And that's, to me, that's another reason we honestly maybe should, because it's not in-house verified, so it would be nice to have that extra bit. And I think it would just honestly, the different layers, whether it's the Assay Commission, actually checking and doing research on pieces. Like I tell people all the time, we all go through cold spells where we either don't find something that we like for our collection, or we don't have the money for what we want at the moment. But the history, the research, the study, and all of that stuff, that's the meat and the glue that holds everything together, at least in those times, you know, where we can still enjoy the hobby and enjoy what we do in between finding stuff, in between when we can't afford something for some reason. And that's why I tell people, whatever you're interested in, try to delve deep into it and try to research it and try to find out something and pass it forward to help out everybody else in the hobby, you know, even the people that's going to come later on. But yeah, those are both Cato pieces. Here's some basic exomumia pieces. These are pewters, and that year, what's that, 75, yeah, 73, 74, and 75, they actually did in silver as well. They were technically Mardi Gras pieces, but they are listed in the Archie Kids 5th edition index guidebook to silver art because they were actually bars as well. But the 1976, 77, they did not strike them in silver that anybody knows of, but those are pewter. Hamilton Mint actually struck those and the silver of those. On the next slide, I think I actually showed the actual edges of those. Tree of Life, very popular. They did them in bronzes, coppers, gold, silver, various other pieces, jewelry, on and on. He used the Tree of Life. His Tree of Life designs or variations of it, pretty close overall, on many, many pieces. Also the turtles, the sea turtles, various turtles. He was a turtle guy, you know, whether it was when he was walking across the outback of Australia or whether he was down, you know, out at sea, you know, he enjoyed turtles, tortoises, and wildlife. They actually said all the way to his death, Mr. Sharpe used to keep a backpack, duffel bag, sort of stuff, camping supplies, his knife, compass, buried somewhere out in the woods behind where he lived, just in case he had to take off for some reason. So he was just that type of guy. He was a wanderer by heart, I guess. So the turtle, and then again, you know, he had various coin clubs and various pieces as well, and non-silver, non-gold. Some of them crossed over to silver, gold, etc. as well. Okay, again, those are those pieces, and on the side of these, the HM for the Hamilton Mint and pewter, and so forth. So, and here, as on the light Hamilton Mint, you'll see the HM, the P if it's proof, the year, etc. within the little circle. So on Hamilton Mint, you'll usually see this type of designation, but sometimes you'll see the HM, 999 silver, HM, pewter, etc. Well, most of the time you see the 4 little circles or boxes with the actual designations inside of those. And those were for the crew of Poseidon, like we were speaking about earlier. This is one that's kind of tricky here. The Lafayette Coin Club, these are about dime size. Mr. Sharpe did this side, from my understanding, and this other fellow, which I cannot pronounce his last name, but Charles here did most of it.
I think that's Arcanel.
Say that one more time.
I think it's Arcanel.
Arcanel?
I think E-A-U-X is O in French.
Yeah.
O is written that way.
He's a language expert in my go-to pronunciation. But this one I was lucky enough to get with the actual original card, and that's how they presented them. And when you look from the other side, you see it like that from the other side as well. You can see where it's clear through there, so they actually get it cut out, so from both sides you can see it. And basically they did it in the style of the medieval pennies. They basically did it, they all hand struck, did the old-fashioned way, the whole 9 yards. They just did it completely in the old-fashioned hammered way and so forth. They are 17 millimeters. Anybody know what a dime is? A common dime nowadays? Is that about? That's about that, give or take, isn't it?
Like,
Yeah.
15 or 16 millimeters.
Yeah, it's close. It's close. I would say that generally they're about 1/10 of an ounce, that sort of range. But very, very neat pieces, and again for the Lafayette Coin Club. And these are some of the specimens I have. I do not have a Kermit that I showed on the other page, but the Ron Guidry that played for the Yankees, he was one of the designs. I think he was from actually down in Louisiana. Ships, various other pieces as well, and just beautiful pieces, beautiful designs. You know, something that small, obviously not as much detail as you would expect on the larger piece, and it was hand done. That one I really like as well. This one's a little bit more line based, but these are some of the examples that I have. The Kermit I'm still looking for, and I think there are 1 or 2 others that I actually have seen over the years that I've never had the opportunity to own. But, and those are silver, that's just the oxidation and the patina, the toning on them, reflecting back a little bit with the, that one has actually pretty rainbow tonings in person. But that is something that is, well, I'd be pretty happy if I was at a coin club and got something cool like that, you know, so that's pretty neat. And then get to some of his rounds, and these were actually struck by the Hamilton Mint. He actually did a lot of pieces of his. This is one of his more famous minted piece through a mint, like Hamilton Mint, of the round variety, okay? This is St. Patrick's Day, 75. That's the original little stand, plastic stand that had the little clear plastic holder. That's the little piece that slides in, and the COA. So this would actually fit into there as a stand to stand up. and that is St. Patrick, and the reverse of it is the Muckrose Abbey. And as you can see, the same general style as his lithographs and a lot of his other art. He just, that was his style, whether it was fonts or the way he did his dyes and his artwork, even the ribbing around the outside. This way, it talks about the Hamilton Mint, 1975, this is the COA, and that's back to the front. And then I figured out how to do that, so I figured that was neat, so I put the little leprechaun on there. But anyway, I really enjoyed the artwork, his designs. You know, some people, I mean, it's great to see realism. If I had an animal design done, I'd want to see all the hair, I'd want to see the giraffe or the lion look exactly like a giraffe or a lion. But with the themes that he did, that really fit it, especially with some of the old-time designs and various things like that. I thought it was, I've always enjoyed his style. Like we were speaking of earlier on the pewters, here is the silver 1974 and the silver 1975, obverse, reverse, and they had the people, main people from their club, regencies, the president or whatnot. I guess that would be equivalent to the president, again, in their club, as opposed to the captain. I'm not quite sure how that terminology is for that. I've heard different crews speak of it slightly different, but those are two of those. These were done for Doyle's Coin Palace. That is silent partners. He did the obverse and reverse of those. Go First Class, and right there it says HAS line, right there. If it was a little bit better picture, but that is a neat little piece. And that is kind of a standard reverse. I do not think he had anything to do with that. That was just standard reverse they used at Mint. This is Pipe Dreamer. We don't have any kids in here, so I'll point this out a little bit there. But Pipe Dreamer, as you can see, that's the head of the woman, that's her breast, one arm there, one arm there, her torso, her legs. So that is a nude woman right into his forehead. That's been on a few other designs, coins and so forth as well. And then he engraved the back. Mine is Simple World, everything I look at reminds me of you, my girl. So thinking of his girl, his lady, his wife, or whatever, he had his girl on his mind, so to speak. And I guess he was thinking of evening things, being she was nude. But that one's pretty popular, and a lot of people don't realize, but actually Mike Gilbert picked up a piece the other day, I guess yesterday, and there's a horizontal bar that Leon Hendrickson from Silvertown Mint, when he was first starting out with the Mint, before he actually had any presses, he had Mr. Sharpe make him a die and had Great Lakes Mint strike it. And it says Old Grandpa, and it's a Silvertown. But it actually has, it's a little bit different design, but it has that same general, the Pipe Dreamer, centered on the horizontal bar. And Mr. Sharpe actually did that die for Leon Hendrickson, the founder of Silvertown. And that was some of the proceeds that he used from that and a few other pieces, and the Engelbart piece that he had minted through Engelbart that helped him actually purchase his actual press and so forth. So a few things like that were done before Leon actually had a press at Silvertown. So that's a nice concept. And this set right here is a sample set. No serial numbers, no designations on the rims. I actually got this set straight from Clarence Criswell, the late Grover Criswell, who was the 40th A&A president back in '77. He was a Confederate money guy and so forth. The Criswell scale, we talk about Southern notes and Confederate notes. Grover and Clarence Criswell brothers. Clarence is still alive. He's in South Carolina. He was Carolina Mint. He just had a few things minted to give out at his reunions and certain things like that. And Mr. Sharpe was too busy to do his dies for Carolina Mint, so Ken Smith, an apprentice of Mr. Sharpe, did all of Clarence Criswell's dies. But this I actually got from Clarence about a year ago. He was looking through a drawer and found him, asked if I wanted, or knew if I wanted So I got this set, and at some point, Jason LeBeau, he's an artist, No Life Metals out of Louisiana, he's going to get this for me at some point. He's paying me payments for it. And he does some silver and sells some stuff because, you know, the heritage and so forth. So I told Mr. Sharpe eventually I was going to pass that forward to Jason. But Mr. Sharpe got this straight from Mr. Criswell. Clarence Criswell got this straight from Mr. Sharpe. So it never actually was serialized. It never got anything on the rim. But Hamilton Mint actually struck these. But the obverse and reverse dies were all done by Alvin Sharpe. If you look at the circuit rider here, which I'll zoom into a little bit better, two different varieties. You get two different dies, as you can see right through here. The face is a little bit different, the house, etc. A little bit different on the obverse die. Anyhow, again, part of that same set that Mr. Criswell had, and that's going to eventually belong to Jason LeBeau. I still own it at this point in time, though. But that's part of the 12-piece set, Profiles of the West, struck by Hamilton Mint. Came in a ground case, had COAs, explained, you know, all this about each one, and multi-level in a ground case. Real nice set. I have one of the full sets myself, but I had this one out being it was a sample. I thought it would be nice to actually take a picture of that set. And it was easier to open up my box and get all my stuff out of my box because this is already sitting there. So I was a little bit lazy on that one. Then again, I'm a turtle guy. I was lucky enough, this is a 2-ounce poured piece that Mr. Sharpe did. He did a Viking, he did a turtle, he did a couple other pours, okay? These are very, very low occurrence rate. No vintage numbers are known. A lot of them may have been melted. A lot of people might not know, you know, back in 79, 80, back in 2011, who knows? It's a shame, but stuff like that's happened, whether it's with press bars or poured. But I was lucky enough to acquire this some years back, and very much enjoyed it. Valuation on a piece like this, the 2-ouncer, that would be in generally the $1,500 range, and that is a silver piece. I think I paid somewhere around $900 for it when I bought it. But if you ever see those, or the Viking or any of those, they're very collectible. So if it's a reasonable price, you probably want to pick it up. And back to Vicksburg, Mississippi, little 6-table show. That guy brought these for me the next day after them lead pieces, and he walked in with some H. Alvin Sharpe gold. So this is a Tree of Life / turtle, 8.4 grams, H. Alvin Sharpe piece. At the little Vicksburg show, I'm glad I seen those lead trowel strikes the day before. You know, I started talking to the guy. But this is what he brought the following day for me. That's obverse reverse. The 24.4 gram I Am the Way Jesus, blank reverse. The Viking, the HAS stamp is actually upside down off a little stamp, so I guess he had the stamp the wrong way when he stamped it, but it's HAS facing up. And so for Studio Gold, and on the reverse, signed H. Alvin Sharpe Studio Proof number 1, 24 karat. Then back to John Baptiste, like we were speaking of earlier, this is it in gold with the Old Orleans Mint reverse. Very, very happy to have all of these, obviously. And then this one was from the E.V. Cato collection. And this is the bar he did for him for a pendant that Mr. Cato used to wear on a necklace. And that's a 40.7 gram piece, including that, which is actually hooked onto it. Looks like, I mean, it was original.
The design with the New Orleans Mint, I have that on a square piece with nothing on the back. It's just stamped, the New Orleans Mint stamp there.
On one of the regular intaglio
In
pieces?
silver.
Yeah. I've seen a couple. I've never owned one, but they're beautiful pieces.
They are.
Is it pretty well rolled and flat, or is it a little bit thicker?
It's a little bit thicker. It's probably, I don't know, maybe an 1/8 of an inch thick.
Okay, so it's probably one of the
It's
2.5,
pretty heavy.
3 ounces.
Yeah, I've never really weighed it.
Yeah, I very seldom do. I did with the gold because it was hard to get the sizes and I wanted to get a good reference on them. And obviously when I purchased it, I wanted to make sure what the weights were because that was a little bit of an expenditure there. And trust me, that was not spot. that wasn't the spot, unfortunately.
Every gram counts.
I've never seen the gold though.
Yeah, but I felt, man, when he brought that stuff in the next day, I was expecting a few pieces of silver, maybe another, lead strike, and he brought some. And my jaw almost broke his glass on his case, my God. But I felt extremely fortunate. I asked my wife, I said, can I? She said, yeah, you can go ahead and get them. So I ended up purchasing these that day over in Vicksburg. And yeah, they used to have it at the Riverwalk Casino, and it was kind of hard. You go in, you make it right, you go in the elevator, pop upstairs. Now they have it down in a little place a little bit farther down. We haven't been over there yet, but they moved out the casino and got a place where they can properly advertise it. People could find it over there. So hopefully that will help their show, because a lot of nice folks over there. A lot of nice folks. But yeah, I felt real fortunate to acquire these, obviously, and beautiful, beautiful pieces. This one has some circulation on it a bit, some scratches and stuff, but it is what it is. I wish it hadn't, and a little bit of circulation right here, as you can see, on the cheek and here.
They're all pure, right?
Pretty close, pretty close.
So it's very soft.
Yeah, very soft. They're all real close. A few of them might be like 23. I mean, slightly less for some reason, but right at pure, if not pure. And this one is just simply cool. This is a regular, this was the Yorkville Coin Exchange back in the day. They did these. You guys probably seen these out on the floor. People buy them for $35, $50 a piece, right? 35 to 50 bucks a piece. And Mr. Sharpe had nothing to do with those at all. But he definitely, at least at one time, owned 5 of them. In this book, which I'll show you in a moment, this is an early guidebook before the Archie Kidd books. That's an early, that's the Wilson book. But inside the Wilson book, towards the back, it actually shows this bar where Mr. Sharpe, like I said, owned 5 of these piece bars, and he took his Cato stamp, Cato the Presumptuous, and did a overstrike. Right here, the Peace Bar, Counter-Strike, E.V. Cato, courtesy of P.B. Trotter at Union Planters Bank Money Museum. That one, well, not that one, that was mine, but that one belonged to the museum. My understanding, I don't know what happened with it now, but it's supposed to be still property of the museum or whatnot. I think Tom Platt at one time owned one. Tommy Grenadas out of Florida down here owned one, and I owned 2 of them. And I actually got that one from Chris Geyer, CMG Mint, some years back. But that is a beautiful, cool piece of history, in my opinion, because it's just so rare, and it just doesn't seem like something that Mr. Sharpe would have done. I mean, he took something else and overdid it. So I don't know the reasoning, I don't know the whys and wherefores, but I was lucky enough to get them over the years. Sure would like to get the other 3. I know 2 of the guys, I can't get them away from, I can't get the other 2 away from the other 2 guys. Maybe one day I'll end up with at least 4 of them. But they only did a vintage of 5, so, but just a cool piece. It kind of seems like an oddity, honestly, to me. It's more of an oddity. Okay. And then some of my prizes in my collection are my 2 Alvin Sharpe chalices. This is about an 18-ounce chalice. This one is actually a little bit more rare. That was a special done piece, where this one was what they call more of a Mardi Gras type captain's piece. Okay. Occasionally, you can still find one of these, various designs on the inside and outside, which I'll show you. But these chalices, that was 24 ounce. It's upwards to downwards. This base is more hollow. This is a big chunk right there. Lapis, coral, turquoise, etc. You put things like that, and I think that's the coral. That's from that side. From the bottom, you have various designs, various stampings. This one has a tremendous amount of various stampings. It has various things on it. That's just very nice. That is the Masonic, where it has the pelican, and as some of you guys know, Louisiana State bird is the pelican. But that's the Masonic, where it's pierced in its chest, the blood of Christ, etc., and the baby pelicans, etc. So that's more of a Masonic symbol. Okay, and that's from the other side. Then the same with that. That's the same general symbol, except it's a different design. It's more upright, and it's hard to tell what that is. I always get confused on that one a tad. Then in the top part says ship. That's the homeward coursed and light burdened, and that is the law of Moses with the commandments. That's in the actual cup of each. And as you can see, this is a much larger piece. My Diane and I have actually had some absinthe out of these, so we've had a sip. We aren't much of the drinkers, but we had to do that in celebration of Mr. Sharpe. You know, so I figured he would appreciate that. So we have had a toast out of them once. And there's a better close-up right there. You see the babies, and that's more upright. And here, that is the H. Alvin Sharpe sign, stamped, etc. on there. And you see a little bit better with the curl and whatnot there. And towards the end, Coin World, November 10th, 1982, is the obituary, H. Alvin Sharpe. That's him right towards the end of his life when he was about ready to pass, a couple months before he passed. He passed on October 22nd, 1982. And as we said earlier on that piece, from here to far places, it speaks of various things inside there. Like it said, while adopted son of the city of New Orleans, Mr. Sharpe continued in his role as citizen of the world hard rock prospect in America's West and traveling to Australia in pursuit of gemstones, becoming one of the first men to traverse the continent's 2,400 miles of outback area east to west. When he was a young man, he actually walked the whole place prospecting rocks while he was down there. I mean, that's just amazing. You know, we hear about Crocodile Dundee and, you know, some of the things on TV and some of the history and some of the people, but to think that as a young man, a self-taught young man, as a merchant marine, coming into a port and just sticking around and going out and doing stuff, that's just amazing to me. That's just amazing. Another thing, and this matters a lot to me, and I know to a lot of you guys as well, when he talks about his philosophy of medallic art and coins and everything. First and foremost, a metal should be good art in the classic sense and not gimmicky or faddish. Metals, after all, will still be around as a witness to our civilization perhaps thousands of years from now, longer than most other forms of art. And that's why a lot of us love this hobby so much. You know, I think a lot of us feel the same way he did about that. And I think that's what kind of, some of that brings us together between that and the history and whatnot. And then one more, that's pretty much over, but one more unrelated historically significant piece. As you see, that's old Denver. And I wanted to show you this. This is at table 323 down on the floor. If you guys get a chance to go take a look at it. It does technically have sound, but it isn't playing right here. There's only 2 or 3 known examples of the Denver mint silver assay bars. 2 definitely, possibly a 3rd. This one being here, it's actually at table 323. Charles will probably let you hold it if you go down there. I mean, the history, I wrote the article for them on that from Clark Gruber. You have the Cripple Creek connection with the mining all the way through the Denver assay, all the way to the Brecht mint status, etc. And this is a 40-ounce silver bar. And it's the rarest that we know of, the rarest government U.S. mint piece, coin or whatever, not counting the one of air or something, but the rarest U.S. mint piece in private hands at the moment. So if you guys get a chance, go down to table 323, give it a hold if he'll let you hold it. Charles Jonathan, he's a member of Isaac as well. And Charles is also working on, he has his computer people working on it, a ingot registry that should be up pretty soon for press and pour bars for silver and so forth. So that should hopefully help build the hobby, get people excited about trying to do a full set, base sets and whatnot as well. So Charles has been trying to do a lot of work lately, but it's just a really great piece of history. So if you make it by it, definitely take a look at that. I wanted to mention that because we're in the same building with it, so it would be a shame not to. And as I always feel, being that I just, that's how I feel about stuff, a lot of you guys know me, so. And that's pretty much the end of everything. Well, I can put it back to that. But I appreciate you guys coming. Any questions about anything? I appreciate it. And if you have any questions, or if you have any information, because I'm always wanting to learn more, I'm always wanting to add to it. EV Cato connection, obviously I would love to have information on that. Or, well, as we talked about earlier, there's so many missing links, there's so many rabbit holes we could go down here, but everyone's interesting to me. So if you guys ever come across any of that, please shoot it my way. And if you're interested in any of it, any help I can point in your direction, just ask. That's how we fill in the blanks, working together on things like that. But I really appreciate you guys coming out, coming up, and whatnot. And but that's it for today.
And some of those pieces that you were showing remind me a lot. Around that time, the Society for Creative Mechanism show started, and so there were a lot of private winners who, some silver, but